Good evening, good morning, good whatever on this wonderful Sunday in October, the 20th of October in 2024. And I'm here with Dave J, about to blow your minds again after last week's incredible Disney Mr. Toad's Adventure.
Right.
Dave, how are you, man?
Doing
You're in
super.
good. You're in good form by the voice. Sounds good.
Oh yeah,
Everything's good. So
absolutely.
now,
Everything's perfect.
we're on episode 11, which is coincidentally two. One and one is two.
Correct.
So it's perfect. It's perfect synchronicity to this new series, this is episode 2 of the Disneyland Adventures in Different Worlds. So Dave, I'll let you just tell us stuff, man.
Yeah. I was wanting to tell you a couple things about the interesting facts about the park, and I was speaking with Mehdi earlier about the idea of what the park was originally geared to, and it was originally geared to the adult, and the idea of being trained on what is coming. You know, there's a few
Yeah.
throwaway rides, but at one of the stores, and it was right on Main Street, was called the Wonderful Wizard of Bras. It was the lingerie store. And I sent you a little cutout article of that. I was thinking they really
You
missed
did.
an opportunity to spell it with 2 L's. That would have been that would have been better. And then it eventually became the China shop, which sold kind of, what at the time people used to have China in their on their dining table, and
They did.
and it went from that, and then it moved to palm reading. So then the whole idea of this park is beyond. It's not this little kid friendly place. It's an entire world of occult. So then we went to the north, and we talked about the Fantasyland. Now, if you're looking at the map and standing at the hub of the park, and you look to the northeast, that's going to be Tomorrowland. All right.
Well,
So we're going to head on over into Tomorrowland, and in Tomorrowland, in the original park, in 1955, it was interesting in that you had, at the opening ceremonies, you had not only Ronnie Reagan, you had military general and brass, you had the governors of the governor of the state, and you had other dignitaries of corporations. So what instead of what I think of it now, looking at it, is as not really an amusement park in the true sense of a muse, as the idea of a demon or a devil park. The idea of it's an amusement park, but not as a funny joy. It's really quite simply manufactured to present ideas and to put them into your head. So then to go to that day, you had in Tomorrowland, there was 7 original, there's your Zion code, 7 attractions originally. You had Autotopia, you had Rocket to the Moon, you had Tomorrowland Boats, Tomorrowland Autotopia. Was 2 different little racetracks, which eventually became one. You had 2 skyways. One skyway went to Tomorrowland, and the other went to Fantasyland. They were little buckets that you would ride on a cable, almost like ski lifts, but just enclosed little ski lifts.
Yep.
And then they had 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea exhibit. All right. So then, and it's now called, it's still there, but it's been repackaged. A lot of these rides have been repackaged over the years and just presented under, most of them are presented now under cartoon characters. And now at the time it's presented under Nemo, a cartoon character, versus Nemo, the Captain Nemo character from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was quite the ornery type of guy.
The fish.
Right, the fish.
The fish. Yeah, yeah.
And notice that Nemo is 1M plus of Neo, which we talked about in the Matrix part.
Yep.
And also notice that the idea of the M, stood stood in is first the idea of 13 or crown or corona, the idea of what you wear on your head, but also turned over, it is the W, right? So it would become the we me type of interchange. Yeah, when
Yep.
you hear people say we, they're actually speaking about me, because they use this we as a reflection or an inflection of their voice when they're actually meaning to say me, because
Yep.
we don't know this, or what they're saying is me don't know this, me don't know that, that idea.
Mm,
So yeah,
fantastic.
so it's just a projection outward. And now I wanted to take a look at that projection outward, and because that is tomorrow, that is, then I'm projecting, I want to project forward and then look at what was there. One was this idea of the rocket to the moon. So there's this idea, and presented in front of this ride or amusement was a rocket, or kind of like a sci-fi rocket ship, and it
Yeah.
had TWA on there, and that's Trans World Airlines. You notice
Yes.
now,
Yes.
trans makes more sense to you now,
It
especially
does. Yeah.
especially with the TransAsia that was rather recently, with the the 777, the TransAsia idea. And then also with the current transgender idea. So the trans is the idea of transforming ages, or transforming time, or transforming product or consumption behavior. Behavior, that's very important, the word behavior. And that's
Hmm.
really what I think we should talk about with regard to this whole Tomorrowland, is what behavior was being presented. What by these rides, the flight to the moon, the adventure through inner space, and some other ideas of what's being presented to you. And then
Yeah.
yeah, so did you want to go 20,000 leagues under the sea, or did you want to go did you want to go around the world in 80
Oh,
days first?
well, I think we'll do well, you just mentioned Nemo, Captain Nemo,
So
so
you
I think
want
we'll
to do,
go with it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
I think so.
what I think, if you look at what's interesting about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, is that its first kind of plot point after, is that they are going to present, the first meeting is a menu, or it's the idea of eating. And I'm going to jump more to the movie on this one, because the book, while it represents this in a similar fashion, the movie represents it in a much more blunt or forward way. Is that when they sit down with Captain Nemo, he offers them food, and they're eating it, and they're claiming it to be food that would be found on terra firma, or dry land. Oh, is this a steak, blah blah blah, this? And he's like, no, that's the innards of a sea slug or something like that. And they're like, oh my, and they're all repulsed at it so they like the taste, but when they're told what it is, they repel, or they
Yeah.
get sick to their stomach. You
Yeah.
see, so then that's the idea of being deceived by taste. So even though that they were deceived to the point of consuming it and eating it, that they didn't get disgusted until they were told what it was. So do you see the power of the words?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, so 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's more being told of an idea of bringing the idea of deception, and this is going to play out through the Monsanto corporate connection coming up, but it's pushing the idea that it's acceptable to deceive someone using a taste, when the end product is not what it was claimed to be. And I'm gonna to say that this is proven by, when you look at jumping forward now, because if you just take that as an idea from the movie and the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and the presentation at the park, how then does that tie in with the sponsorship, and does the sponsorship do the same thing? And are they trying to do the same thing? And I'll tell you what's interesting about 20,000 leagues before I move forward. The idea of 20,000 is if you do 20, if you, instead of leagues, because it's an impossible number to be a real submarine adventure.
How many meters is a league,
Yeah.
or how many
So
miles is a league?
anyways, man supposedly, because it doesn't matter, but man is supposedly it can go no more than 2 leagues. So
Right.
whatever that means, so you can tell it's an impossible story. So then what does it mean? But let's move it to days. Let's say 20,000 days. Does that make sense? That would mean 55 years exactly, or right around 55 years. That makes
Right.
more sense. So then by the time a man or a woman is 55 years, they should have figured it out, because that's also the number of balance. All right.
Yep.
So then are they balanced? So then let's jump back to this ride, or the series of rides, which has a sponsorship through Transworld Airlines, which is a Howard Hughes joint.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And then Coca-Cola is involved. Remember Coca-Cola? Just put that to the side now. But then the main one for this area is Monsanto, which is known for, at the time, working on saccharin.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, well, what a substance that one is. Mm.
Yeah. So let's then find out. So then, how you can already see the tie-in though with the idea put in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea of deception by taste.
Yep.
So saccharin and aspartame and things like that are mimicking sweetness, not necessarily the taste of pure cane sugar. Now, why then would you want to get rid of pure cane sugar and then use saccharin or aspartame or things derived like that? Is because then you're taking away a plant crop, and a crop that allows local wealth to grow, and you're going to produce a product that does 2 things. One, it cuts down on competition. That's just a worldly thing. However, look at what it does spiritually to you. If you're taking away a natural sugar and you're putting in, let's say, saccharin provided by Monsanto, and through a subproduct, aspartame, whether that goes into Tab in 1963, the first drink, or whether it goes into artificial sweeteners that goes into Diet Coke, things like that. So then let's first finish with saccharin, and know that if I can tell you that you're going into, since we're going into Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland is the idea of what is to come, and what is to come can only be built on the pieces offered. So then, if you take a look at the so-called Jewish idea, or what's also covered in a lot of grimoires we talked about in one of the first shows, I want to say the first show, we talked about the idea of what a grimoire is, and within some grimoires, there's what's called magic squares, and magic squares are squares that are made the same number left to right and top to bottom, and the squares are then filled with words, and then they're filled with words, and then the words are mirrored. Take for example then saccharin. Now, what words are you going to find in saccharin? You're going to find archaic or anarchic. All right, so then that means what does that means that is without law or control. So then if that character consumes that or idea, because every product made in this existence is the formation of a thought, of a sound. It's given a name, and then it's produced physically. So this is saccharin. So what then spiritually does saccharin represent? You already saw it here. That's no law or control. We'll break that word down even a little bit more, and then you're gonna if you bring it down to the 6th letter or the present, chains is in that word, chains. like you're
Mm,
chained.
mm, mm, mm,
Chained
mm.
is in
Yep.
that word, right? And then
Yep.
so now let's move forward to another word. Chain. Now, if that demon is consumed, what does that word or demon or lie, which is representing a product that is being by deception replaced and given to you, versus in this case, pure cane sugar? What then does aspartame entail? What's interesting is one of the words is Patamars. Patamar is an idea of a vessel, of it as a sailing vessel, so yourself as that vessel being built, and also within there is restamp, like to restamp something that was stamped one way when put out. Think of a letter, and then it gets restamped and sent to another direction. It gets repurposed
Mm,
or it gets deceived. Now, do you
yeah.
remember we talked about the invasion of the body snatchers? Well, the story came out in 1954, but the movie, the first movie, was 1956, and that was
Yep.
the
Yep.
Don Siegel movie. Now, there was a scene where uh, where Miles is told to be brought in, and there's the body on the of one of the pod things on the pool table. Do you remember? And he says, he goes, "Its face, Miles, it's vague." Remember when he's looking at it? He says, like a first impression that's stamped on a coin. So he said, like a first impression. So you do the first impression, which gives the rough outline, and then and then Miles says, "Yeah, it isn't finished." And he goes, "Yeah, you're right. All the features, but no details." So
Hmm.
what you see? So even in there, you have this idea that you get stamped, but the details are now what's going to be offered. And now let's go into that. So we kind of talked about how the corporate sponsor ties in directly with the story as being a vehicle for deception, and the deception of taste in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is directly mimicked by Monsanto, directly with saccharin and aspartame and all the rest. What are the other ones that they have? They have sucralose, which is Splenda. They have saccharin, which is sweet and low, aspartame, which is equal.
It's the same
So you
chemical, isn't it? Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
same
well, it's
chemical, and
amino acids. It's a
yeah.
separation of amino acids, and it's saccharin's derived from coal tar at its base. So you have everything comes from creation. However, everything from creation is not for consumption. If
No, of
that
course
makes
not.
so it's not
Also,
yeah,
yeah,
it's not evil in
Monsanto.
itself, but it's not meant for what it's doing. It's obviously being
It's
placed.
it's trickery. It's
Yeah,
trickery. And
yeah,
Monsanto, just remember,
yeah,
is Mount Satan. Mount
right.
Satan. Break that one
Hmm.
down. So so
Yeah,
you're getting being betrayed,
yeah.
for sure. So sorry about that. I just had to
Oh yeah, no,
remind
you're good.
everyone. Mount. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so guess who then ties right in? This is on the corporate sponsorship, and this is before who ties in right in with the high fructose corn syrup, and that's Monsanto. Now, if you recall, this is where I'm about to take you around the world. All right, in 80 days. Are you ready to go
Fantastic.
around the world in 80 days?
In a balloon.
Let's
Yes.
let's start with New Coke. Was introduced on April 23rd, 1985. All right. New Coke. What happened was this new Coke, and this has been talked about by most people, a lot of people who lived through this remember this. So all the Coke that you remember was taken off the shelf, and this was Coke that had cane sugar in it.
Cane
It was
sugar.
all
Yeah.
taken off the shelf, and new Coke was put on the shelf on April 23rd, 1985. This is when it was released. All right.
Yeah.
Exactly 80 days later. Exactly 80 days later.
Wow.
July 11th, 1985, Coke Classic was brought back, put on the shelves, and guess what? It didn't taste right. The reason being it replaced cane sugar with high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
So the 80 days was required because there is some literature, and I'll most definitely bring it to you, of the of the idea of 66 days or thereabouts being um, needed to form a new habit.
Yeah.
All right. Or to have forgotten the taste, and then it even goes to 80 on the outside. And this was done. I'll send Joel a link to I did find the paper I was looking for through a UK university where they did a test, and they found that 66 days was the medium found within the group, and then to form a new habit. All right. So then 80 days around the world in 80 days, and if you read the book Around the World in 80 Days, the 80 days he was very insistent, the entire book, on it being exactly 80 days. He was very insistent, and it makes no sense otherwise if you just think about somebody who's going around this plan or around this place. So what if it's 85 days? It doesn't matter. But he was very insistent. So therefore,
80.
that
He wanted
tells
80.
you that tells you that was a detail, because remember, eight's always a detail that had to happen. So then you had this. So just to bring it into the so-called world of this reality, the Coke is an exact example of the 80-day mark being used from the from taking away of the old and the introduction of the new. However, the new being a deception of the old, because if you, Rick, if you were to say, go into your Sev, which is what we call 7-Eleven, or
Yeah.
your convenient mart, and you would be like, "Hey, Mister, this Coke Classic just isn't right." He'd be like, "Hey, listen, kid, you don't know what you're talking about. That's Coke Classic.
It's Coke Classic, yeah.
It says Classic on there." Now, would they
And
lie to you,
they have to
kid?
use the C. They have to use the C. For C.
CC.
Coca-Cola says 33 for sure, and
Yeah,
you've got Coke Classic 33. Yeah, there you
yeah.
go.
So
Which turns
you
into 8. Turns into 8. Let's say that
It
again.
sure
Use the old
does.
shows.
That's the idea
Yep.
of the detail. And remember, the idea of 8 goes back to the idea of John 10:9. Well, it goes back to the idea, a lot of it, but 10:9, the idea of the metonic cycle, or where one's metonic. What does one drink, or what does one consume that leads them forward? John 10:9 is, "I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved." It's the story of the good shepherd. So that idea then is put forward as what then then what are you going to go? Are you going to go this way or that way?
Yeah.
So then, if I can add one, I wanted to add one more idea, because we went around the world in 80 days, kind of to tie into the idea of how, even with this Coke idea, that a natural product of cane sugar was taken, replaced, and was brought back under just a legalistic name change to deceive through taste a public, and then introduce a inferior product. All right. So you saw how that
Yeah.
happened, and it happened through deception. And then the idea of it's a small world, and I'm going to jump forward a little bit. It came into being at the Disney place in 1966. What makes that important is the 66 idea, or the idea
Mm-hmm.
of remember, the 66 idea is the idea of making a new habit, and that was just this obnoxious ride where
Oh yeah.
it just go, if you want to just get repulsed, take a look at that. It's
Little
just these.
little
Oh, you've seen it?
dolls all singing
Oh,
to you. I
oh yeah,
know
and they
that
sing
because
you over
I've
and
watched all
over
the
and over.
over and over. I've watched the I used to watch Disneyland, the TV show, obviously
Oh,
Disney World, and they often would play that, and I think that's scary. Like going through those little dolls, little Chuckies, lots of little
oh yeah,
Chuckies
little
in
Chucky
different
dolls.
costumes,
Yeah,
little
yeah,
Chucky dolls. Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So hey, so then jumping back, because I wanted to bring up one more story, because all these stories that
Oh, you disappeared. Are you there, Dave? You've disappeared, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back. You're back.
Okay. So
All
I'm
good.
not sure if we're recording though, because
Oh no, we're not. We're not. There's no
Okay,
bot in the room, so
so let me go
So
ahead
if you-
and kick him out, and we'll be right back in. So let me kick him out. Stop the current recording, and then let's bring him back in.
that's him. He's there. Yep. As he said,
Okay,
now,
jump
now
out of
I'm
the room,
recording.
jump to the closet, and let's jump back in.
Okay.
Okay. Right. I am back.
Hey, I can't see him.
We
but
are back.
We are back. He's if he says he's recording, he's recording. So we just had a bit of a technical issue there, but Dave's going to go back onto the exact same subject we were talking about before, the
Right.
Spartan, Monsanto, and
Yep.
saccharin, and the breakdowns. And we've moved forward a little bit though, and we were talking about we've done the time
Well,
with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with the offering of food that was a lie. A lie.
Yeah, deception.
Yep.
Deception and then also Journey to the Center of the Earth is also a by any means necessary story. By any means necessary story, because when the main character comes in, his name is Liedenbrock. He sends his work to another professor, and that professor basically steals it. Tries to get up to Mount, I call it Mount Snuffleupagus, but it's Mount Snuffleskull. I always call it Snuffles. So they're going, and it's named after an alchemist and so-called 16th century. Again, 16, 6 plus 1 7, alchemist. So it's already a hidden clue. And then within the movie, check this out. So they find a piece of so-called lava rock, and they're like, oh, this thing's far too heavy to be lava rock. And then they wind up cracking it open, and guess what they find in there? No other than a plumb bob.
Interesting.
Now, of course, a plumb bob is the idea of the Masonic plumb bob, or the builder, and that's the grand architect. That's the one who's holding the actual point of conception. That's where the point of measurement is happening.
Interesting.
So then you see. So then you see so all these stories are also Masonic, and they're also within the title, telling you not to pay attention to the physical, let's say in the case of 20,000 Leagues, not to the physical idea of a submarine sailing around, but the spiritual idea of days and age. Because if a title doesn't make logical sense physically, you then need to think of it in a way that it does make sense.
Right.
And then once you've made sense of it, all of the different lines in the movie that are given, like I told you that line from the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
How it was an imprint, but it had no details.
Yeah.
So then you start to go ahead and you put these different ideas together. So you see that the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is a story about a menu of deception. It's an imprint, but it doesn't have real details because all the details are made up and manufactured. However, when that coin that was put into the mind gets stamped a second time with the details, that's actually the product that is put into the body.
Yeah.
The saccharin, the aspartame, whatever the product is that's being sacrificed or changed for the natural product.
Interesting.
Right?
Saccharin and sacrifice. Sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you also notice that these same companies, like Douglas, Mr. Douglas, with the remember the
my three sons,
Green Acres.
Oh yeah, and My Three Sons.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Mr. Douglas.
Mr. Douglas.
So with the what they started to introduce with the TWA Moonliner was not only the mission to the flight to the moon, but it from 19 when okay it was from 1975 to 79. So there's a few year period where it was mission to Mars.
Really?
Now, yes.
Interesting.
Now you'll find out that that's also going to coincide with some of the earliest sci-fi movies that were, instead of
Oh, sorry.
focusing on going to moon, they were trying to go to Mars. So
Very
that's
Elon,
going to,
very Elon Musky, very musky
yeah.
Elon
So
Musk.
now look at 70s, go look at late 70s sci-fi movies and you'll find some Mars adventures,
Oh, huge amount.
because it's all, so, but then that's for a generation to share. That's not for, because it only ran for a few years. So then it's not the idea. So if you look at that, that's an injection. So that becomes the generation or the father that then can interact with the grandson and say, oh, I remember back when I was just a tyke that they were just talking about going to Mars. I even went on a ride about it. And then his grandson's like, yes, Daddy, we're going to Mars. Can't you see it on the computer screen? See, so then it was a false, from the beginning, it was a false injection. However, the seed, it doesn't matter that it took two generations to flourish. It still works because it still makes that connection between generations. So that is that generational curse.
Yeah, intergenerational.
Magnified.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, magnified too.
Mm.
Magnified, isn't that interesting that magnified goes into the idea of the adventure through inner space, which is what it eventually became. And that is also the idea of when NASA winds up taking over sponsorship, because the flight to the moon first was TWA. Then
Yeah.
it was Douglas, which became McDonnell Douglas.
McDonald's.
Then you
Yeah.
had Ford.
Yep.
Ford did the Mars bit. The time it was a Mars adventure. It was Ford. Now they still they have the current day. There's a current day Mars thing now, but this is it came and went. So it went away for a while. So everything comes in cycles because you're injecting for just a while and then you pull it back, right? So then.
Yeah, so Ford sponsored it as well, which is interesting. They got the Model T, and then Tesla and Mars as well as the T on their logo. It's just a bit of a tie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And we'll tease the 20 T, the idea of
20.
TT. If you take 20 22 TT 22 4, the idea of door, because if you take two T's and if you lay it on its side, left and right, you can make it into an H. If you notice that.
Yeah.
Right.
Twin towers.
So H.
Yeah.
H is 8. The idea of Heil Hitler or 88. The
Howard
H is
Howard
always
Hughes. Howard Hughes. You just mentioned his name before.
Howard Hughes, and all these characters, that's why all these characters have these different names, because it's presenting you with the 88, the 16, the 7. It's presenting you with the idea, because you notice that 16 is nothing more than the 19 reflected, or the metonic. So if you believe in these different characters, then if you believe in the character exists, then you have to by logic accept all of the associated details assigned to them. Because then you have to say, oh, well, I believe the character exists, but not everything you did. Well, then, okay, then you go ahead and tell me where you make that separation.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to. So I say, just dismiss the character as being put in front of you for a reason. And then just accept that for what it is. There's nothing to do about it, but then just use that as just a piece on the board to then move from. Say, okay, I know what that is already. So now I can see how that affects and what it ties into, which is what we were talking about, how all this ties into, because NASA winds up sponsoring this whole mess at the end and still does. So then they become the clearinghouse. Right, the corporation moves away from the PR. They're like, you guys handle it, because they're doing much bigger business. So then NASA's nothing more than a PR front, just like these other ones started out to be.
Yeah, it's a giant film company, basically. It's got the biggest film company in the world. The
Yeah.
most screens. Yeah,
And then,
absolutely.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, on all that. So then, as far as so that's like Tomorrowland also had some ideas of like the future house and the future restroom or future bathroom is what they call it. And it's
Tell
really
me
just
what was the future bathroom? Um,
it's all convenience sake, meaning that you're going to, instead of having to go outside the house, you would have a bathroom, and you would also have a bathroom that's separated, kind of
well,
the toilet
exactly. Well,
separated from the sink.
most houses had an outhouse,
Uh-huh.
and the toilet was nowhere near the actual main part of the house. That
Yeah.
could up till the
Yeah.
50, around 55ish, you know. So they were right.
Yeah, so you got to make, yeah. So they're trying to, they're also the kitchen of the future, because it's the house of the future. So that each room is kind of showing you where the design's going to go. It really is what you see in a more compact way with the Brady Bunch house. Just all that 70s, and I grew up in Southern California, so that's just, those were what the houses were,
Well, yeah,
along with glass flowers. You had the glass flowers on the table in the 70s.
big time.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Very Brady, but
yeah,
you're right. Very Brady for sure,
yeah.
100%.
So you had a kitchen that was designed a certain
And
way for, so
sorry to interrupt, but Mike, here's another one.
yeah,
Mike Brady was an architect. Mike Brady was an
yes, he sure
There's
was.
always an architect involved. Like we're talking about
Right.
the Invaders with
Hmm.
that was, he was an
Right.
architect. How come that all architects in these important shows? There's something there, Dave.
Yeah.
You're actually opening up a big truth there. There's a lot of stuff with architects
Yeah.
in TV shows.
Well, it's the so-called architect of the universe is what the so-called Mason idea is,
The spiral
right? So
architect.
then if you
Mm.
yeah, but you also see the plumb bob that I told you about in the Journey to the Center of the Earth. Is
Mm.
the plumb bob is what was found that led to the whole adventure happening. Without that plumb bob being found, there would have been no adventure.
Of course,
So
yeah.
it was the guide. Do you also notice then that the idea of the plumb bob, or the idea of the grand architect, is the idea of arc?
Of
Right?
course,
Do you
yeah.
see yeah? So then, and then the idea of arc, or the idea um, of abracadabra, let's say
Mm-mm-mm.
abracadabra, because we talked about two.
Yeah,
We talked about two making four, but abracadabra is 11 letters.
it
So
is. Yeah,
11, abracadabra. So
two.
abracadabra reverse is a four, or a door is
Dalet,
presented,
dalet.
right? The dalet. Now then, do you find it interesting that within that word, of four letters, you have Abba and Baba. So the idea of father is in there. So Ali Baba also, if you think
Yes,
of that
yes,
idea.
yeah, yep, yep,
Also, the idea of bad is in there. All right.
yep.
Do you see? So, and also, guess what's also in abracadabra? Arc, ARC. So it's the idea of the abracadabra, or the spell cast, the
Mm.
deception cast, is the arc that then leads or brings the character, the mind, into the next step. And that is, the character is each man or woman who hears every single thing spoken. Because everything you hear, whether it be through music, or even if you're speaking to yourself, you're leading yourself somewhere. It's leading to something. Otherwise, it's called babble. If it's pointless, it's babble.
Sa-
If it's leading to a point,
arc is in
if it's leading
saccharin
to,
too. Arc, saccharin.
say again.
Arc is in saccharin as well. You know, we
Yeah,
were talking about, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
mm-hmm,
Interesting stuff, man.
yeah,
Really crucial.
yeah. And then, yeah, so then, and also tame is an aspartame. So tame,
Exactly.
to make,
Very
yeah,
interesting.
to calm one down.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so then, so you see,
asp, the snake. Asp,
yeah,
the snake.
yep.
Yep, it's in there.
Now, interestingly enough, there's the idea, the story that you have asp, and you have the idea of poison, and there's the story of venom, and with Paul, the idea of Paul. It's a bit, people can read about it. Paul goes. He gets washed up onto a beach. He's with a bunch of heathen, godless heathen. They're sitting there scared and tired. He's over there building a fire, making himself useful. He gets bit by a freaking snake right out of the woodpile. He takes it, and they're all worried. Oh man, he's gonna croak. He's gonna die. He takes it right off. He whips it right into the fire. He keeps trucking. And then, of course, instead of saying that this guy just has, he's just a follower of Christ, they try to turn him into a god. Do you see? So they take this. They see something, and they can't accept that man can be in relationship with God. Therefore, he must be a god. Do you see how they confuse it?
Very
And
much,
they step over,
Gnostic archon as well, with the ark as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, they step over the logical thought and go to the absurd constantly.
Fantastic, man.
Because it's constantly.
Yeah.
So how are you? What are you thinking about Tomorrowland? How did you like some of those pictures I sent you?
Yeah, I did, absolutely. But, so again, I've never been there. I'd love to have gone there as a child. That would be my. If someone said, "Where do you want to go?" Disneyland, I would have said Disneyland, not knowing that what Disneyland was, and actually the history of Disneyland goes back to the land given to them was organised by military. The military gave them the land, so it was the intent in the whole thing, as you're exposing extremely well here. This was a made to be thing. That's where you had Ronnie Reagan and all of those military brass there.
Star Wars Reagan.
Yep, exactly. And
remember he did Star Wars.
Yep. All of this is showing you that Disneyland is not a children's playground. It is a big weapon of malintent to change a culture and a people into a different form of Earth. And I think we were talking about the architecture, as you've explained to me before. This isn't something that they were just knocking around. This is something that was going to happen whether you liked it or not. That bathroom of the future, that kitchen of the future. You keep going.
And also aluminum was a big thing being shown. And the reason that it was important about aluminum is because they were moving to the idea of a full working family. So if you're going to move the woman out of the house into the workplace, the convenience of meals has to be accepted. Therefore, they started showing them aluminum, how it's going to be used for TV dinners, how you're going to just pop it in the oven and be done. You can go do your work, you can be free, and you can still
be free.
So then the acceptance of aluminum because if you remember, the first TV dinners came with aluminum tops as well.
Really?
Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, they came with aluminum tops you'd roll back, almost like a sardine can or whatever.
Yep.
And so the public gets and if you remember that the so-called at least in the United States, I'll just leave it at that, is a lot of the culture is driven at the time and still is by California and Hollywood and movie TV.
Oh yeah.
So if it's accepted there, it's accepted
everywhere.
everywhere.
That's
and
a
then
fact.
so then
that's
the
a fact
idea
that's not just your thought. This is a fact. That's you're 100% correct, Dave. California is the model of the future cities and life. If it happens there, it will happen to you eventually, no matter where you are globally.
Right. So that's what kind of just to keep it instead of getting too far, confused, because if we talk too much, you kind of lose the point of what we talked about. We covered Tomorrowland exactly as we should have, and in everything we talked about, if people took notes and if you just follow those lines through, you'll see how everything is contrived narrative. Even novels and books and stories are presented to you, and in a way that this is a template for what the future looks like. Therefore, when you see it, you're going to say, "Oh, that was predicted." No, it was written.
Yeah.
It's just this is written into the script. This is the way it's going to happen. And guess what? You're going to be deceived by this, and here's how it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
then when it happens, people will still act shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked and amazed that it happened.
Yep.
You know, because Journey to the Center of the Earth, remember I told you, is by any means necessary. It really, and I meant to get farther to the point of that, not only the plumb bob, but the idea that the main character basically picks off of the exited old professor all of his gear to go down to the center. It was like really a story of theft, and with the so-called wife character, it was a story of just greed. And so it's a bit of a nasty story. But there's also the idea that was very well taught of the guide. Do you remember the guide character?
Was it Pat Boone?
Who? No. Do you mean no, not the character. Just the idea of it was a Swedish guy.
Lars. Lars, or it's something like a very Swedish name. I have to go to bed. Interesting. A big blonde Swedish guy was leading them into the
Well, what was his main request? He gets paid on time every time. As soon as he didn't get paid, he was bounced. Yeah. That was it. It didn't matter what happened in between. He was there. He took care of it. But when he put out his hand each week, there needed to be the amount, and he was good. Yep. So just that to me
he was the
ferryman.
He's the ferryman as well, wasn't he? Like the river.
But he's also the lesson, though, that it's never too late to just walk away.
Yeah.
If what you're dealing with, if you're journeying to the center of the earth, the idea of journeying to the truth, whatever the character, whatever you want to call it, if you're getting there and the people that you're going there with are not offering you meat and not offering you sustenance,
don't give them any money. Don't give them any money.
No, you walk away. You simply drop your hand, walk away.
Yeah.
Because you haven't lost anything.
No.
All you've gained is your time back. So and that's a plus.
Yeah, 100%. This is really interesting tie-ins here, Dave. Just like last week. Again, we're moving into each episode gets more intense and more interesting. More interesting. I'm fascinated.
And then so I kind of a preview. Now I'm going to move into a preview. Then we can do a little talk on something nice, nice and tasty. Is next week we're going to head to the Pier West, gaze westward, and head to the final frontier land.
Fantastic.
And of course, any guesses on what one of the movies might be? Han.
Yeah.
All right. So there'll definitely be some Final Frontier, some Star Trek in there.
Oh man, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, there'll definitely be some of that in there.
Very much space, the final frontier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to have Davy Crockett and, of course, Mark Twain. So that gives the Mark Twain character is going to open up some different avenues that I know you haven't thought of yet, which I'm already in my head thinking it's pretty excited to share with you.
Fantastic.
Because I've talked about that character in the past, so I already have a mental Rolodex on him. And then Davy Crockett allows us to talk about some history kind of hoax tie-ins.
The Alamo.
Yeah, the Alamo, the amusement part called the Alamo.
Yeah.
And also one of the funnest things there is the Frontierland shooting gallery.
I would have loved that. I would have loved that. That's my favorite thing. Shooting
Yeah,
gallery
it's
is
a
my
great
favorite.
time.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
very jealous that you actually got to experience it. Back in the real days,
Oh yeah.
I don't consider nowadays the real days. I consider the '70s way more prescient to what we're going through, and it was more fun. Everything was more fun back then. I grew up in
Yeah.
that era, and just going into these fun parlors or amusement parks was just, it was just absolutely revelatory. For a child, you were just, your
Right.
mind was open, and that's just what they got you at, because you opened up your mind and they put stuff into it. And
Yeah. It's like bringing a 12-year-old kid to a strip joint, man. It's like no wonder their eyes were wide open, because you remember some of the stuff you were seeing in some of those pictures.
Mm.
It's like the kids they're going out of there shocked, right? Like, what did I just see?
Yeah, well, at
You
Mr.
know?
Toad's Wild Ride, subliminally, you had a huge, big, semi-erotic painting of a nudish woman, but kids
Yeah.
picked, and the father would have been looking just as much as, and
Oh yeah, of course he would have been acting
yeah, he was just as
all stuffy.
mm. Anyway, so yeah, well, do you think, so we end, because you have actually,
Um,
you've just dropped a whole lot of major stuff, so we can move on to something
yeah,
more relaxing.
yeah, something nice and easy.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was kind of, what was I thinking? I did want to bring up one more thing.
Mm.
Oh, and
It-
the idea of the idea of the World's Fairs idea,
oh yeah,
because it's a small world.
after all,
When it was presented in 1966, which I can say is, if you remember year one, if you go back to Rosemary's Baby,
it is exactly
1960, yeah,
yeah,
was
66 year one.
declared year one.
Yep.
Yep. It was at the New York World's Fair in 1964 was where It's a Small World was first presented.
Wow.
All right. See? So then it's the idea of these ideas are being moved almost like back then, like a circus. Like a carnival, I should say, is a better idea.
Carnival.
A carnival
Yeah.
they get moved from place to place so that the local, and you don't even need all the local scrubs to go in and see it. You just need those that are influencers to come in and see it at the time. Newspapers, those that wrote articles, they go in and they see it, and those with money, and then they present that as being the latest culture, and of course the proles, those that have been deceived into desiring that as being a goal, will then desire that even sight unseen,
Yeah.
even if all they know about is what they read in the newspaper.
Yep.
See, so and then so then that's kind of like that's the before you could. In fact, that's why fairs have kind of gone by the wayside for most part. Is that type of advertisements is a little bit past its due date. Most of advertisement now is going to be digitally fed
Big time.
versus
Yep.
versus in person.
Yep.
And so it's that type of idea. And so then and also I was going to say the original rockets there at the Trans World rocket, like they got rid of the original rocket. Now they just have like some little, cheesy mimic of it that serves as a burger stand. So it's like just a shadow of its former glory.
Yeah.
The TWA Moonliner.
Yeah, they do
But then I even want to say that they repurposed that whole thing into Stitch Adventures, which is just that.
Lilo,
the
is
whole
that
part now,
Lilo and Stitch or whatever? Is it what I'm sort of
yeah,
thinking?
yeah. So now they've quite literally reduced it all to basic and simple cartoon. And I was talking to Mehdi earlier about this as well, about when I first went, a lot of Disneyland was presentation, meaning that you were going in front of slides and you were being presented with stories and information that was obvious scripture. It was scripture for the world, meaning that this is coming, this is what's to be expected. The future classroom will have this, and so it was really just really a 1984 dressed up in a fever dream. Because if you go to Disneyland when it's busy, it's chaos. It's organized chaos with that center hub,
Yep.
people crisscrossing all day, and it's madness. So you go through there, and it quite literally is a scene.
Mm.
It is something else. And so when they say Wonderland, it's because you get in there and you're wondering which way you were going,
Yep.
because the place is confusing. So that yeah, so it's not wonder in a good sense. It's wonder in a confusion sense, which goes back to the
So as a double,
yeah.
it's another double meaning word. So you're wondering, or you're and wandering's also in there, type of thing. Wandering and wondering.
Right.
They sound the same, is the same. According to Dave J, I'm saying 100%. 100%. Sounds the same, is the same. Wandering, wondering.
It is the same. Yeah. If it sounds, if you say it out of your mouth and you can see it,
yeah,
that's
wandering.
what it means.
Yeah.
That's what it means. That's what it means. So also, I was going to say, what was interesting, it just came to me. It was the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It talks about the ocean as being liquid space.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Yes. So that's another tell as well.
Yep. If they say it, it's true.
You just have to recognize how it's being said.
Liquid, because space. Everything in space from Kennedy's speech onwards is all maritime related. It was ship sailing on a ship. Maritime. C, C with the 3, and C and SEA, same thing. Be told probably.
Remember with aspartame, literally within there, the Palomar is the idea of the sailing ship.
Sailing ship, yeah.
Or the sailing
So
it's all there. And also meat is in there, so it's the idea of that consumption. Yes. So everything. Yeah. So it's all just not only a physical consumption but a mental consumption. And you also and Monsanto also had the Hall of Chemistry. Now the Hall of Chemistry was just really a bunch of displays on all these different, which is nothing more. It could have been the Hall of Alchemy, but it was quite literally recruiting for that business, which was saying that if you're going to be getting into chemistry, this is what you're going to be doing.
Isn't it amazing? This isn't amazing how that Monsanto and NASA and all that would be so heavily involved in a child's fantasy, playground.
Yeah. So then the only logical conclusion is that it was never a child's playground to begin with.
At all.
That was obviously a cover story.
You said that last week from the very first Disney show. This is not a child's playground. This is a much more nefarious.
They got some drunk frog driving a car into hell.
Yeah, and making sure that you're guilty as you went underneath that one part. The judge says guilty.
Yeah. So. Yeah, exactly. Right when you come in the door, and you know that Princess Castle at the California location is 77 feet tall.
What a coincidence!
77. 77. And it also uses forced perspective to make it look bigger than it is, meaning that it's built bigger at the bottom than it is at top.
Yeah, very
bigger
cleverly
bricks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that is also used in a lot of real world amusement park, pyramid hoax scams is the forced perspective building technique. And so then that's used, especially with the Sun and Moon Pyramid in so-called Mexico and the ones in Gaza.
Yep.
Those are also versions of the same thing. Those are amusement parks for a generation.
Yep.
Well, actually, for a century before.
Let's just say
because if you were reading Agatha Christie, if you were reading the Hercule Poirot and all those type stories, there was a lot of Egyptian.
There was
lore in those,
and Dave, she makes the author of Harry Potter look like she sold 3 books. Agatha Christie's books are some of the biggest selling books ever made, next to the Bible, well below the Bible, obviously. But her books are incredibly influential. People need to understand Agatha Christie, and there's Christie, Christ is in the name,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so and within those books, a lot of it. Well, you have the Iris story. You have Death on the Nile
Yep,
story,
yep,
which takes place in Egypt.
yep.
So everything's right there, and a lot of so a lot of those stories are quite occult. But then so are the Sherlock Holmes stories,
Oh yes.
and yeah, and a lot of those are occult. And in fact, a lot of the characters within the stories are called out as Masons. Even within Sherlock will describe them as a Mason simply because he observes that they have a medal or an amulet.
Mm, mm,
He
mm.
says that you're a Mason, blah blah blah, and then of course he calls them out because of course the Conan Doyle character is of course a Mason.
Oh
Regardless
yeah.
of the real name.
Very
So
heavily into the occult.
the
Arthur
yeah,
Conan
so
Doyle. Yep.
and yeah, so you have the occult. You have like the blue. You have the blue red low level, fireman, policeman, door guard, mason, which is just who are just flipping burgers. But then you have those. If they're a mason, but they're also not a cult, then then they're not of any level whatsoever.
No.
So if you see someone who's talking occultic and they're also a mason, that one right there is a devil.
Mm.
That you can tell right there. That one right there is a devil. Therefore, what they're putting out is going to be evil because evil's in the word devil, so is lie. All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So then, if you know that, no matter what it sounds like, we talked about these stories here because Jules Verne's is the same character. He's also a devil. But then within these stories, we were able to ferret out a method or a meme that was used even then to show what was being used by the so-called corporate sponsor,
Mm.
and then how that corporate sponsor put that same idea to real use to the so-called population, and they were warned the whole time had they paid attention.
Yep.
Right. So then that's how the whole thing kind of ties around back to itself.
Absolutely, man.
All
It's
right.
as usual another critical show. If you go to episode 11 of the L2. It's amazing how it's synchronized into as we've been talking about. This is a new series, but we don't need to
Right.
call it. But it is episode 11, but yet it is episode 2 with the two ones
Correct.
of Disney. So fantastic. And Dave, you can talk about something more relaxing now. That's even more
Oh yeah.
relaxing than going to Disneyland. Have you got any ideas
Oh,
about it? Is there something sparked in your
well, I kind of wanted. Yeah, I was thinking we're talking about. We talked about we'll do the final Frontierland. We'll just leave it at that next
Yep,
week. That'll be it for that.
fantastic.
And then I would like to really do because that'll be done is done there. Best coverage anywhere. And then after that, I don't mind where you want to go.
Well,
I'll go anywhere.
I saw something you mentioned another. You'd picked up another brand of something or other, or another strain
Oh,
during the week. I saw you mentioning something or other.
well, I did. I got the Last Supper. I did. Did I tell
Yes.
you about that one?
No, no, you haven't.
Okay, I got that.
So do tell.
Oh, okay. Well, the Last Supper strain is a Northern Lights strain. So
Or did we mention? Now you
I think
mentioned
we
Northern
did
Lights. I
mention
think we
that.
did. So we'll have to change
Yeah,
this,
and then
change tact, change your sail to a different direction. But is there anything else that you've bought, or something you can remember as being way better than it used to be, or is it, or something that's not as good as it used to be, as far as smoking equipment? Techniques. I mean, there's all sorts of mini pipes now. There's many fold ones that you can fit in your pocket that are flat from Amsterdam. I've seen. Is there anything?
oh yeah.
Uh,
Well, there was this one guy. Yeah, there's this one guy who used to make a little.
well, you disappeared again. You disappeared again. But I know you. Are you there, Dave? Because Craig's still recording. Craig is still recording. Dave, are you there? If he isn't, and I'm sure he will come back. But what we'll be leading out with tonight, I've decided we're going to play Disney songs. To me, are just depressing, absolutely depressing. I just think of Old Yeller. It depresses me. Anything to do with Disney now as an adult. I love the comics though. I'm still a big fan of the comics, Uncle Scrooge, etc. But not so much old musical Disney stuff. Pollyanna, which will be a subject we're going to bring up in the future. I haven't discussed this with Dave, but there's a there with Pollyanna, and this word Polly and Anna, and the fact she used prisms, and she was hanging around old men all the time. Very suspicious, I say. Very suspicious. In the future, here he is. He's back again. Dave, can you hear me?
I'm back.
You're back, man. Sorry, man. I filled in the blanks. I filled in the blanks.
Oh, nice.
So it's all good. I was just talking about in the future. We'll talk about Pollyanna. Very strange messages in that show for children, allegedly. And I'm saying I wouldn't let my children watch that at all. Full stop. A little blonde chick hanging around with Carl Malden. Not such a good idea. Not such a good idea. And the fact that she uses prison, and she old big nose. But anyway, Dave, you want to keep? We're talking about something to do with What do we want to talk about?
Just a little different. Little different. I think I've told you before. My favorite method is just the old bong water pipe.
Yes.
I tell you what, when I was in the Middle East, I was in the United Arab Emirates.
Do tell.
Yeah, and it was around in the afternoon. It would have been 4:30, and it was very nice. And then when you went to the walking down the little main drag, you had these little cafes would open up, and you had a bunch of hookah bars out there.
Fantastic.
And these guys would come out in their whitest of white, dress, come there and just drink tea and smoke on hookahs all afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that was quite a relaxing little place. It's not advertised as such, but I had no issues whatsoever in the UAE.
Isn't it interesting?
Or really anywhere over there.
You can be much more relaxed in those countries. Like my daughter was telling me about Morocco. What a wonderful place she had and time she had there. Same thing, hookah pipes, apple flavored tobaccos. Beautiful. Have a beautiful meal and finish with some dates and some dips and things like that, and then puff on the hookah pipe. Puff away.
Yeah, it's quite a relaxing evening. It's quite a relaxing atmosphere when the whole street's relaxing with you.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not sitting around. They're not sitting around drinking Coca-Cola or aspartame-laced Tab or whatever, or Diet Coke. They've picked a really relaxing substance, and hash is everywhere there. I had a great conversation with an Afghani guy yesterday. He was telling me about these. Nice. He said the hash. It's a different level where he's from. He says it's not the same. Oh, yeah. You can't get it. Or if you're very lucky, you might find it over here if someone managed to bring it back. But just the way his eyes lit up when he was talking, I mentioned it. What's the difference because he said in Afghan where he's from, he said everything's there. It's just whatever you want. And
well, you know what? There's a difference in processing, Rick, that sometimes people will use, and it's not always the best. It's if you separate the flower from the stem.
Yeah,
it makes a great product. Don't get me wrong, but if you allow the whole plant to be put into your process, I call it full spectrum hash or full spectrum. You get everything because there's a lot that's going on that's not in the flower that also is going to play an effect, and especially on the relax side, on the CBD side, or the body, what's called the body high side. That's going to come from the plant. So then a lot of times, so if you're going to do a female plant all the way, to do it all, because otherwise if you don't have any type of male not hash, but the just
Resin,
hemp. Well,
hemp.
if you don't have
Okay.
hemp, like the male hemp to add, because to make a real nice hash, you can add some hemp and the cannabis, the female side, and pop it together.
Yep.
That makes a nice full spectrum too. So yeah, so really what happens in countries like that is they don't get so fancy as to pick off just the flowers and do it that way. They just the whole thing boom in there, so you're getting a full spectrum product.
Yeah.
And that's what gives you the much more kind of fuller. It's like a dark beer, or it's like a chocolate
Yeah,
beer,
man.
or something like
It's
that.
like
It's just
it's the original.
yeah.
It's more the original one. What back in the day people were relaxing with. They weren't.
Right.
Yeah, they were using these old techniques, and they're not involving
Right.
chemicals extraction. They're using,
Right.
old brown paper and things like that, or just
Well, yeah, what I used was just ice and water.
wow.
I would make the water I'd use would of course as close to freezing as I could get it.
Mm-hmm.
The colder the better, but without freezing. And then the ice you would put in there, and you would agitate it so it would start to it would get a little slushy, which
Mm-hmm.
is fine because it would quickly melt, and then it would become, and then like I say, you'd beat it until you got that sea foam on top.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that sea foam is that same foam would be similar to what is going to be produced off the top of the idea of the coal tar, which is going to be then used to make saccharin and things like
Interesting
that. So
tie-in. Interesting
it's a
tie-in then. Interesting tie-in.
yeah,
Good.
there's always these what seemingly look like different ideas, but the process to get there is the same. That's why I was able to use a lot of the techniques I learned in semiconductor in my wax making business, because what I was trying to do there, I was also trying to do here. So I said, if I can do it there, I can do it here, just in a different scale.
Yeah.
I don't need this big vacuum machine that, I just need a little one that I can buy off Amazon. And then that worked perfect.
Yeah.
But the process was what I was looking at. It's like I want this end result. So if you're looking at making a product, you already envisioned the final product in your head.
Yeah.
You've already seen it. It's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Now then I just work backwards. I pull it back and I create it.
Yeah.
See, because it's hard to create something you haven't seen before. It's easy to create something that you have seen before. You have to know that your imagination is that powerful.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is the idea of alchemy. That is also, if you read any of these so-called grimoires, any of these alchemy books, it's all the idea of the mind being set in, and this is what I did want to bring up, and this is important. It's the idea of the mind being given a set of instructions, or being told that you have to do this, that, and the other thing in order to get a result. It's called tradition. It's called within church it would be called the sacraments. It's these ideas that you have to do these certain procedures to get this result.
Also,
Now
Dave, you just said it again.
Yeah.
Sacraments and saccharin. There's also another tie in there. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to say that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
I couldn't hold my.
Because all this stuff. Yeah, because you're looking at all this stuff as that magic square. So these words are put into the magic square, and everything you can create from that square.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in your head right now. You can do it on paper too. Yeah, everything in your head you're creating then is true, because you can logically connect it to the source.
Yeah.
And then say the source is here, therefore it's true. What do you know? I know this is true. Go test it. You'll find it's true.
Yeah.
Now then, if you look at the idea of, let's just jump into manufacturing. And for example, there's still things like it, but back when I was in semiconductor, we were going through something called ISO 9001. It was an industry standard that would say that if your company was ISO 9001 certified, you could put that on your package, and that the consumer would say that company at least had a certain level of procedure or quality assurance for this product. Do you see how it's like anytime you have a business, businesses have to be made to support that business. That's how industry's made, and that's how you employ these generations of people, because they have to be given jobs. So
Yeah.
so you create industries within industries. However, they're never made too complicated. And here's the idea and here's the tie-in, and here's kind of where we'll leave it, is where if you participate in the program, you say, I want my company to be ISO 9001 certified. What they do is they come in and they don't present to you a list of things you have to do. They ask you for a list of things that you say that you do.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So what they say is that they're going to come in and you're going to present to them a list of things that you do to be, accountable to your consumer, and that they're going to test you on them, and to make sure that where are these records? So then where's the mistake then? The mistake is that most companies go out of their way to make the most complicated procedures possible.
Yeah.
To screw themselves, because then they when they're tested on their procedures, they'll fail, and they'll fail certification. When I was talking with at Headway, I was talking with the team, and I said, what we have to do is we have to make our procedures as simple as possible, so that there's no way we can fail in implementation, because when they come to test us on them, I mean, even a dummy can do this. A PM sheet that's going to be 1 to 2 pages long versus 8 to 10, as short as we can make it, because that they're only testing us on what we say we do.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the same then, is if you keep it in mind that you will only be tested on what you say you've said, done, or have seen. Right? So that at the end, you need to make sure that and everyone knows, that they will be tested on what they've said and what they've claimed to have seen and what they've witnessed to. That's their certification.
Interesting.
And guess what? They've set their own limits. They've already judged themselves by the standard they set.
Yeah.
Because their mouth set the ledger. Their words set the frame.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yep. So that's Tomorrowland. That's tomorrow. That's what happens tomorrow is the moment from today. It's the idea that all of those plans that were put on the back burner are supposed to come to fruition, right? Yeah. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll get that done. And so then
as Uriah Heep
do it
said,
today instead.
As Uriah Heep said in one of their songs, tomorrow is only today's yesterday. Or something, or today. There was a very profound thing, one of their songs, or someone's song. Anyway, Dave, I think we'll knock it on the head.
Yep.
You've dropped, as usual. Probably, I actually will go as far as saying there's no other shows out there that are summing up the mystery of Disney like you've done. And 2 episodes, and we've got many to go, because we've only just hit the very base level of your entrance into the theme park in 1955. We've only done I'd say 5%, 10%, maybe 15%. But tying in those Jules Verne novels, as you've done, is up there with the best I've heard before. And people say, excellent. Oh, you're just saying that. No, I'm telling you. Like I said to my daughter the other day when she came and helped me, I said, you absolutely have helped me. I said, I'm not just being polite. You have absolutely saved my skin by coming and helping me. And I meant it. And so people need to kind of, we're too flippant with our language, Dave. When someone says, oh, that was really good. No, you got to tell someone that. I'm not joking here. What you just did was fantastic. And I said that to her, and I'm saying it to you. You're really doing some amazing stuff here. Highly, highly impressed. And I'm not just saying that. Rick. I'm not being flippant. I'm not being flippant. I'm not being flippant with my language here. And so we'll wind it up now. And I've also decided, I thought, from now on, at the end of these shows, I'm not going to play anything to do with Disney. I'm going to send Joel a song.
No more Disney.
I heard a great track as I was driving my daughter. So she's only 23, and she's into electronic music, and I'm 60, and I'm also into electronic music.
Uh-huh.
There's no gap in generations, and I saw her tapping her fingers away as we're driving at a great electronic driving song I've discovered from a show I listened to by a band called Mortrix. It's called Electron. So we'll end the show out, and I imagine Dave, as like me, does a lot of driving, and he's in a completely different zone. He's in Arizona, I'm in Australia, and I'm going through, but I'm not in the desert area. I'm in a very from Sydney to where I live,
Lush.
and very lush,
area.
so much rain, and as we're driving, we did a few huge days, and we came back, and I was playing the song, and I thought I could see her tapping her finger away, and I thought, yeah, this is cool, and it's called Electron. It's new, only about within the last 3 weeks old, by a band from Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon. Is it? Am I right? Portland is in Oregon. It's Portland. Yeah. Anyway, we'll end it with that song. Dave, next week I'm looking forward, as usual, to our next
to the final frontierland.
Final frontierland, man. Looking forward to it.
To the west, we turn to the west.
If you can send the bot out, we're going to end with the Mortrix the song Electron. It's a great driving song, and I would recommend you having a nice smoke and then going for a drive and listening to a nice electric beat. Be told. And you will. All right, man. You send the bot out, and we'll have a chat. We'll have a little chat. We'll have a chat.
Bye,
Bye, man.
Bye.